the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation share with you the origins, early history, and development of our healthcare ministry. The people of France suffered from a godless revolution in the 1790s. About 3,000 priests were exiled to the island of Jersey. Among them was Father Joachim Fleury, who was later to become one of the founders of the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation. The people of the town of Bron, place of the early foundation of our congregation, were faith-filled and resisted the efforts of the revolution. The revolutionary government sent 1,200 militia to be stationed in Bron. They ransacked churches, tore down religious symbols, and used the Catholic Church in Bron as a stable for their horses. They were unable to tear down a statue of Mary within the church, even with the help of ropes and ladders. This statue remains in a prominent place in that church today. The revolution promoted the worship of the goddess of reason.
I am Father Fleury, co-founder of the congregation. After 9 years of exile in Jersey, I returned to France and was later assigned to be pastor of the church in Bron. One of my priorities was to help the people of my parish return to the practice of their faith, as the revolution had banished all faith experiences from our land. I spoke to Louise and Laurence Lemarchand, two young women who lived across the street from the church, to request their help in reviving the practice of the faith among adults and children.
I am Louise Lemarchand, co-founders of the congregation. My sister Laurence and I agreed to help teach the children by setting up 2 classrooms in our family home. After a year, we outgrew this first school and moved to a large abandoned building which had been used for storage. It was a cold building which we named La Glacière, which in English translates to icebox. Brr, it was cold. Father Fleury wanted us to wear a dress with a rosary, crucifix, and veil. He asked that we be called by the title sister, along with our baptismal name.
The early beginnings of the community were very poor. Had the 2 sisters did not complain, Father Fleury prepared a directory of regulations for them, and after 10 months of living together, they took private vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience during a Mass in the parish church in August 25th, 1828.
I am Laurence Lemarchand, sister of Louise and co-founders of our congregation. In 1828, 2 young women asked to become part of our community, the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation. We began taking poor girls into our house to care for them. Father Fleury asked us to start a school for deaf mutes. Very soon, we also started an orphanage for homeless children. Sister Louise also cared for the sick in their homes, while I and other women taught the children.
I am Monsieur Lemarchand, the father of Louise and Laurence. I was pleased with the good works done by my daughters and wanted to help in any way that I could. As a farmer, I owned a field near the parish, which was called La Croix Rouge, Red Cross, because a crucifix of the parish stood on this property. I gave this field to my daughters for their charitable work. With the help of the assistant pastor and parishioners, construction of the convent and school began immediately. Within a year, the sisters and boarders were able to move into the new buildings by the end of September in 1832.
I am Sister Louise, First Superior General of our congregation, later known as Mother St. Louis. By 1836, there were 14 sisters who belonged to our religious community. We continued to add new buildings as the need arose. Sisters helped in the construction, by bringing stone and materials to the workmen. Tools were generously shared by the neighbors. On one occasion, Sister Marie forgot to return a tool which was needed by our neighbor. The town crier beat a drum, loudly proclaiming the loss of that iron band. Sister Marie calmly said, "Hush, I am the thief," and returned the tool. The candid admission caused admiration and astonishment from the people nearby.
I am Sister Laurence, co-founders with Sister Louise. We were pleased to offer our first retreat for the laity in May of 1837. It was attended by 220 persons. We sponsored a second retreat in July of 1837, which was attended by 630 women and girls. We sisters sponsored a number of other retreats, drawing large numbers during the fall of 1837.
I am Mrs. Tremaine, who encouraged the sisters to start a school at Plato. In October 1937, the first school outside of Brome was started at Plato by 3 sisters from the Mother House. I offered a small house to the sisters and a little income for their welfare. We were delighted to have the sisters come to our town to teach our children. Deaf mutes, as well as the children of the parish, attended our school.
From 1844 to 1860, the sisters opened education and healthcare ministries in 15 different parishes in the surrounding area of Brome. From 1860 to 1880, 20 schools were opened in the Diocese of Saint-Brieuc and 1 in the Diocese of Quimper.
I am Mother Andre, the Second Superior General of the congregation, elected to the position after Mother St. Louis. We were very concerned when some of the schools were being secularized in 1897 by a godless government structure. Our sisters were obliged to leave those schools, and they become public schools. The sisters took charge of 2 orphanages in Paris, and benefactors were lavished in their gifts of support to support these charitable works of the sisters.
I am Bishop Follier of the Saint-Brieuc Diocese in France. Despite the raging political storm in France, 33 novices made profession of vows at the Mother House on September 10th, 1900. I presided at this ceremony. The following year in October, I was again at the Mother House to give the religious habit to 15 postulants as they entered the novitiate. At that time, I told the sisters, "I don't know what is awaiting you, but this I know, that the true religious is always happy and never regrets having consecrated herself to God."
With the closing of all Catholic schools in France, the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation turned to other countries for refuge and ministry. 5 sisters left for Belgium on October 18, 1901. 4 more sisters arrived in the French-speaking part of Belgium on November 15, 1902. Catholic schools were immediately set up by our sisters in Belgium. In the early 1900s, the sisters in leadership and other sisters living at the Mother House in France were forced to leave France, transferring their home to the island of Guernsey, near England, as their temporary headquarters.
I am Mother Césaire, one of the first 6 sisters to travel to America. 6 of us sisters left for Rat Portage, Manitoba, Canada, in September 1902 because of extremely cold winters and unfamiliarity with the English language. Our leadership in France directed us to accept the invitation from the pastor at St. Benedict Parish in Wild Rice, North Dakota, where we began teaching on September 13th, 1903. It was a new building which was called St. Joseph's School, built by the parish. Within 10 years of our presence at Wild Rice, 12 young ladies from Wild Rice sailed to France to become sisters as they joined our novitiate there.
I am Mother Hilarion, leader of our sisters in the United States. The next years were amazing. We were called by God to disperse and go to the ends of the world to bring the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
In January of 1903, the Provincial of the Holy Cross Fathers in the United States made arrangements for our Mother House in France for 50 sisters to go to various ministries operated by the Holy Cross Fathers in the United States. Sisters arrived at Portland, Oregon, Austin, Texas, New Orleans, Louisiana, St. Joseph Farm at Notre Dame, Indiana, and Holy Cross Seminary at Brooklyn in the city of Washington, D.C. Because of the inability of the sisters to speak the English language, they did the domestic work of housekeeping and cooking for these Holy Cross seminarians and college students.
I am Mother Hilarion. We were then called to begin communities of sisters who taught in schools, worked in hospitals, specifically in North Dakota and Illinois.
That same year, Father John Powers from Immaculate Conception Parish of Spring Valley, Illinois, approached the Holy Cross Fathers to inquire about sisters to operate a hospital. 7 sisters were assigned to go. They came from different schools and some came directly from France. They arrived on November 17, 1903, very tired and apprehensive about the future.
I am Mother Madeline, who was in charge of the beginning of the hospital in Spring Valley. Father John Powers met us at the train and took us to his parents' house. That night, Father stayed for supper with us for a meal that had been prepared by 3 women of the parish. After supper, Father showed us the house, that is, the 4 walls, for there was no furniture at all. That night, they brought 4 beds for 7 of us.
On the following day, Father Powers told them that he was giving them the house. He said they had to provide for their own needs. He then left for a warmer climate. Father had expected the mine officials to help finance the hospital. Rather, a feud broke out among the Catholic and Protestant workers, and so there was no financial help from them. Women of the parish helped the sisters to learn the language and gave them sewing to do, which provided some income. The most difficult activity was going to the mines to seek donations. There, they were helped by a school teacher and a young miner who could speak to the men.
I am Mother Madeline. We had a very hard winter, trying to find work and to provide for ourselves, but the people were very generous. In the spring, Father Powers returned, and he gave us a horse called Pompey, along with a 2-seater cart. We all learned to drive Pompey. You could often see us going with Pompey to the farms to ask for food.
Many people brought food at holiday times, especially Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter. The sisters also provided for themselves by beginning a mini farm with gardens, an orchard, a cow, and some chickens.
I am Sister Gilbert, a sister at St. Margaret's. Our patients were not numerous at first. Our first patient was so lonely that she stayed but a few days. The sick preferred to stay in their own homes, so I went to Ladd to take care of a woman who was dying. She had no one to care for her except her husband, who had to work. When I arrived, I found the house in great need of cleaning. I found it very hard to stay there. but a neighbor came to me and offered to sit with the patient while I went to his house for rest and some food. After the woman died, her husband was so grateful for our services that he collected $200 for us from the miners.
St. Margaret's history would not be complete without recognizing the assistance the sisters provided during the Cherry Mine disaster.
I am Sister Simon, a sister of St. Margaret's. When we heard of the tragic accident at the mine, we went to Cherry to see if we could be of help. 4 of us went. Then later, only Sister Mary Anthony and I went for weeks. Many miners lost their lives. Many widows and children remained. We stayed with them and provided comfort and needs wherever possible.
Gradually, more patients came. By the end of 1904, the sisters had cared for about 50 patients. By 1908, they had outgrown their hospital and a new one was needed. The hospital continued to grow and prosper. It continued to build and extend its services amidst much change, renovation, and continuous remodeling and construction. St. Margaret's continues to serve the mission of Jesus Christ to this day. In 2003, a gala 100th birthday was celebrated at St. Margaret's Health. Our journey now takes us back to North Dakota, where we had schools but no hospitals. Monsignor Andrieu, the pastor of St. Andrew's Church in Bottineau, had seen the need for health care for his people in northern North Dakota.
I am Monsignor Andrieu, pastor of the Catholic Church in Bottineau. In 1912, I saw an opportunity to fulfill my dream of getting a hospital in our town. The School of Forestry wanted to build a new building and was willing to sell the smaller one. With a committee from the townspeople, we went to the leaders of the school and purchased the building for $4,500.
Much work needed to be done before it could be used. Mr. Ruel, an employee of the courthouse, provided some willing hands.
I am Sister Anthim, one of the sisters that worked at the hospital. I had come to help clean and prepare the building with the help of Mr. Ruel's group. They were prisoners at the local jail. We were a little nervous and concerned about working with them, but Mr. Ruel assured us that they were harmless.
St. Andrew's Hospital was opened for patients on October 23, 1913. It could serve 12 patients. Dr. Johnson admitted 3 patients that day. It grew, and by 1918, they had outgrown the building. In 1918, the sisters sold the hospital building back to the School of Forestry for $10,000. Then they began to build a new hospital for $70,000, which would house 40 patients. Later, in 1928, they added a 3rd floor to make it an 81-bed hospital with 15 bassinets.
I am Mother Rose Turbin, a nurse at St. Andrew's Hospital and the first director of St. Andrew's School of Nursing. In 1929, I felt that we needed a nursing school. We needed to educate women who would hopefully be future nurses at our hospital. So we built a 4-story brick building at the cost of $84,000. Over the years, we graduated 354 nurses from it. Of these, there were 24 of our sisters. And in 1971, the nursing school was closed.
At St. Andrew's, growth continued. A totally new building was constructed in 1970. Through the years, St. Andrew's was the scene of many great celebrations. 25th, 50th, 75th, and 90 years. This summer, St. Andrews will celebrate its 100th birthday. Onward, St. Andrews. Now we move to central North Dakota, to St. Aloysius Hospital in Harvey. Many attempts as far back as 1914 had been made to begin the hospital in Harvey. It was unsuccessfully attempted by 5 different groups. Finally, in 1938, the stockholders of the hospital offered it to Father Eck, the pastor of St. Cecilia's Parish.
I am Father Eck, the pastor of St. Cecilia's Church. I immediately contacted the sisters at Valley City for help. 5 sisters were assigned to this ministry. They were a little worried about opening a hospital here because so many groups had tried but failed to do so. Bishop Aloysius Minch was totally in favor of it and strongly encouraged the sisters to accept the challenge.
Much work needed to be done. With scrub pails, rags, and mops, and a lot of help from the parish ladies, they managed to clean it up. It was opened on October 14, 1938, under the name of St. Aloysius Hospital in honor of Bishop Aloysius Minch. From the beginning, the Hospital Guild formed and began earning money for the hospital.
I am Sister Catherine Marie, the administrator of the hospital and a nurse. We started the hospital with $14 and a lot of faith. With Sister Mary Bertha and 3 other sisters, we cared for 761 patients the first year. The numbers increased with many elderly patients who needed special help. We then opened an old folks' home, as it was then called, on the 2nd floor of the hospital.
Soon the hospital was not big enough. Since they were drawing patients from such a large area in central North Dakota, they soon needed expansion. In 1942 and 1952, they expanded. In 1959, a whole new building was constructed. More accommodations were made for the elderly through a nursing home, a skilled care complex, and a living center.
I am Sister Emilian, a nurse at St. Aloysius. Almost from the beginning, we saw the need for special care for the elderly. We established the 2nd floor of the building for them. Already living at the hospital was Julius Cabista. Julius was totally paralyzed and could do nothing for himself. He was very precious to me, and I came to understand him very well. Many others said they couldn't understand anything from him.
St. Aloysius continued to grow, especially in service to the elderly. When they outgrew the old folks' home on 2nd floor, they were moved to the old hospital that had been replaced. The old hospital eventually also became obsolete. It became the home for the sisters who lived at the hospital and the sisters who lived at the school and taught there. Both groups enjoyed their new home and found new opportunities to share life in community. As the sisters became fewer in number, they began to minister as chaplains in the hospital, totally dedicated to the spiritual needs of the patients, employees, and administration. In 1939, we traveled east from Bottineau through the Turtle Mountain Reservation to Rolla. Rolla Community Hospital was born with many birth pangs. The Commercial Club of Rolla began to promote the idea of building a hospital. A group of them went to the bishop in Fargo to inquire about obtaining a group of sisters to start one. They had circulated a petition to find out the feeling of the town about their project and had already passed a bond issue for $15,700. More money was received through the Public Works Administration, Problems began when they were not sure who owned this hospital. The city had to own it in order to receive the government funds.
I am Mother Garrick, the provincial at the time of the opening of the ministry in Rolla. When Bishop Mensch came to ask us to build another hospital, I was not sure that we could make it a success, and we didn't have many nurses to spare. The bishop was forceful in requesting us to do it. Before we would commit the community to the project, we studied the city's projections for building the hospital. This study made us realize that within a very short time, the hospital would be too small. So we asked for a third floor to be built.
More financing was needed from the Public Works Administration. On the opening day, one of their representatives was there to see if the city had taken possession of the hospital. It was named Rolla Community Hospital, owned by the city, with no contract of lease with the sisters until 1949.
I am Mother Rémy, a French sister at Rolla. I was chosen with Sister Bernard Joseph and a laywoman, Martha McClintock, to be the first nurses there. Sister Monica Mary and Sister Sylvester also came with us to do the domestic work.
A renovation and enlargement was made in 1956, which had been financed by a grant from the Ford Foundation and a loan from the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation. In 1966, the hospital was again too small. This time, efforts were made to obtain financing through the Economic Development Administration, but they refused the hospital's many requests.
I am Sister Mary Francis, working at the hospital at this time. Since we had been refused the money, we decided to make a trip to Washington, D.C. John Sappington, Sister Celine Marie, and I talked to our legislators, requesting them to intercede for us. We returned with no promise of help. Finally, the Economic Development Administration gave us the grant for $3,180,000 for a totally new hospital.
The old hospital was renovated into a long-term care for the elderly and remained this way until 1987, when Rolla Hospital purchased the hospital in Rolette and renovated it into a nursing home. At that time, the name for the nursing home was changed to Presentation Care Center, and Rolla Community Hospital became Presentation Medical Center. One of the services that began at Presentation Medical Center was home visiting of patients.
I am Sister Joanne, nurse at Rolla Hospital. I was interested in home health and had received training for it. Rolla proved to be an area of great need. In 1977, I organized it as a department of the hospital. Nurses went to Rolette, Towner, and Bottineau to care for people in their homes. Eventually, it became too big to manage from Rolla.
Home Health was incorporated under the new name of Prairieland Home Health in 1985, with a main office in Fargo and subunits in other places associated with our hospitals. As time progressed, reduced government reimbursements made it impossible to continue in the local areas of North Dakota. Today, 2 offices remain, one in Fargo and one in Spring Valley. At the moment, both have managed to survive though other healthcare systems have closed their home care ministries.
I am Mother Helen Marie, Provincial of the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation from 1962 to 1972. We saw the need to involve the people living in each geographic area of our healthcare organizations and to call on their expertise. Thus, we formed the board of directors for each healthcare entity, which included not only sisters, but also lay people.
I am Sister Kevin Stroh, past president and past provincial of the Central Management Corporation, later known as SMP Health System. In the early 1980s, Sister Mary Leo and I facilitated the creation of our health corporation to provide the expertise and time that was needed to manage our healthcare ministries in a changing world. After my retirement, Aaron Alton became the president of the system. In 1984, we began a management contract with Van Buren County Hospital in Keosauqua, Iowa, which continues to this day.
God continues to lead the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation Ministries. In 2001, the SMP Health System was approached by the Banner Health System with the proposal to sell 5 nursing homes to our health system. The sisters discussed and discerned among themselves about the feasibility of this proposal. It was the decision of the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation that our health system proceed with negotiations regarding the purchase.
I'm Aaron Alton, President and CEO of the SMP Health System. In October of 2001, we received an RFP, or a request for proposal, to purchase all the hospitals and long-term care facilities in North Dakota and South Dakota. This created both, and this was from the Banner Health System now, this created both a unique opportunity and challenge because there was another health system who was also interested in purchasing these facilities. I contacted my colleague in South Dakota, and we decided that it was in best interest of both systems if we formed a consortium. The SMP Health System would bid on the North Dakota facilities, and the Avera Health System would bid on the South Dakota facilities. We agreed that we would visit with our sponsors and see if they were interested. I remember meeting with Sister Marlis, who was the provincial, Sister Dorothy, Sister Carol Jean, and Sister Margaret Rose, and we discussed all of the opportunities and challenges this purchase would create. Our biggest concern was we knew we would not have the presence of a sister in each of the ministries. So the sisters decided that they would go back to the community and visit with the other members. They would pray about it. Well, after a discernment process, the sisters agreed that we should move forward with the due diligence process. So for the next 2 months, we did our due diligence and prepared to bid on 5 long-term care facilities. We knew that this bid had to be competitive because there was at least 3 other organizations who would be bidding on these properties. I remember it was a Friday in January. We received a call from the broker, Merrill Lynch, notifying us that we were not the lowest bidder. However, Banner really wanted to sell these facilities to us if we could come up with another $5 million. I explained to the broker that that wasn't possible. So after hanging up the phone, I called the Banner representatives in Fargo and requested a meeting. I met with them, I explained to them how we had arrived at our purchase price. That if anyone were to pay more than what we were offering, it would jeopardize the viability of these facilities, because our bid was based on the long-term reimbursement methodology in North Dakota. I also used that opportunity to explain to them that no employee would lose their jobs, that we would do everything in our power to make sure that we could duplicate the benefits, the employees would still have their years of service, and then I reiterated, if you did sell it to anyone else, it would put the facility, the residents, and the employees' future in jeopardy. That weekend, I thought about it, and I realized, well, this wasn't meant to be. Well, then on Monday morning, we received a call from the Banner representatives in Phoenix wanting to meet with me that Thursday in Phoenix. We had just been awarded the bid. Now is when things really get interesting. We needed to figure out a way to come up with $20+ million to pay for these facilities. So for the next 2 months, we worked on the financing package. And 2 weeks prior to the closing, the lender got cold feet. The lender wanted 2 additional environmental studies prepared. Well, this was a deal breaker because those 2 environmental studies would probably take 2 months. On top of that, Banner had already provided these environmental studies and had indemnified us of any issues whatsoever. Well, that's when our legal counsel, Greg Thompson, stepped in and said, I have someone we should talk to. I thought to myself, Greg, it's taken us 2 months to get to this point. We have 2 weeks. And we ended up meeting with State Bank and Trust in Fargo, told them our story, and they said, hey, I think we can do this. The problem was State Bank had a lending limit of $5 million, which meant that they would have to form a consortium of banks, and other banks would have to participate in this loan agreement. Well, working day and night for the next 2 weeks, somehow, some way, we put the deal together. So on April 1st, 2002, our newest health ministry was created, SMP Long-Term Care. Today, the 5 facilities representing SMP Long-Term Care are Ave Maria Village in Jamestown, Mary Hill Manor in Enderlin, Rosewood on Broadway in Fargo, Cheyenne Care Center in Valley City, and Villa Maria in Fargo. Each of these 5 facilities is unique in its own special way. It's been a seamless process from the Banner corporate culture to the SMP ministry that exists today. I truly believe divine intervention played a role in the creation of SMP Long-Term Care.
The SMP health system is to this day very involved in the ministry of God's people, carrying out the charism of the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation and following Jesus' admonition to go out and preach the good news of God's kingdom. God is leading us ever onward to new horizons, new ministries.
I am Sister Carol Jean, Provincial of the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation in the United States. The Holy Spirit has guided us through the years, leading us in our service of the sick, the elderly, and the poor. Early in our history, we were not able to meet all the needs by ourselves, and so we invited others to join us in this ministry. We are grateful to each of you who are part of our healthcare ministry. You are here these days to continue growing in knowledge and love of Jesus, who shows us how to serve in his healing ministry. We appreciate your dedication, and in the name of the Sisters of Mary of the Presentation, I thank you and ask God to bless you.